or whether you want me to do it.
It's whether I feel confident doing the intro. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the... Last time you came on the podcast, we were called the Slim Society Show, weren't we? Yeah, the podcast's on you. We were called the Slim Society Show, weren't we?
Yeah.
We're rebranded. We're relocated. We're reimagined. We're reinvigorated. We've restarted. We've refreshed. We've reset. And we're going again, Mr. Mark Nixon. Now we're called Fit Talk Radio. The co-host of the show, Master Will Hewkin, is not here.
That's a shame.
It is a shame because you two have never met, and you're two literally very important people in my life. And I would love to see also the contrast between you and him.
Yeah,
because
so would I.
Both very intelligent, but absolutely completely different personalities. So I just think this would be... And you were going to get on so well. So we're going to do another podcast after this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
There's going to be more in the future, isn't there? So he does apologise to you for not coming. He's too ill. He called me up coughing down the phone. And I said, don't infect us. Listen, we don't need infecting with whatever germs you have, boy. You can pass. We'll rain check until next time. So thank you for coming down, Mark.
You're welcome, as always.
I don't know what episode of podcast this is for me and you. 3 or 4?
Something like that.
Depends what you count as well, because you also used to come and conduct, shall we say, some of my in-person Slum Society meetings and stuff like that. Do you remember?
I do. Well.
Yeah. Really good, wasn't it? Really good back then. And people, all my friends and clients always ask about you and when they can see and hear from you again. Because it's always excellent, positive conversations, isn't it?
We try. Yes, we try, and we'll do our best today.
And we meet up outside of podcast, don't we?
Yeah.
Every so often, as we can, to talk about sometimes some things and sometimes nothing, just to catch up as friends. Last time I saw you here at the Station Gym, which is where we are now, owned and created by my friends, and we had a little tour around. It's a nice place, isn't it?
Beautiful.
Beautiful. They've done a fantastic job. So we're here in the community room. And as always, usually we meet up, don't we? And then we suggest doing recorded conversations. So as always, the topic of podcasting and information dissemination came up. We had a little back and forth, and then you suggested something absolutely incredible, something that's apparently you've been thinking about and speaking about and looking into quite a lot, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, the biopsychosocial and spiritual aspects of health.
Correct.
Is it? Yes.
Yes. Well done.
See, I come prepared. I come prepared for these conversations. So walk us through this then, because that sounds confusing. That was confusing to me at first, but if we break it down into the separate segments of the word, biopsychosocial, spiritual, I think we should start there.
Okay.
You explain to me, so I'm getting it right, and to the listeners, what the sections of this are, what's the overarching... Theory would be a good word, yeah?
Yeah. So it's probably easy to put it in context. And so if you think about someone with, let's say, anxiety or depression, and they get offered an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety tablet.
Okay.
And so that's part of the biology, and it's a very small aspect of the biology. But if that's all they do, if that's all they take, but they carry on eating badly, drinking alcohol, to a unhealthy level, not exercising, that's in the biology. They're still stressed, they're not sleeping, they're not relaxing. The psychology, they're telling themselves a terrible story, and then socially they're staying away from people, they're not looking after the kind of deep self, but all they're doing is taking this tablet. The likelihood of recovery is very minimal to virtually none.
Okay.
However, let's say you take someone who's got the same condition, but they decide not to take an antidepressant, anti-anxiety tablet. However, they look after themselves biologically in terms of stress reduction, relaxation methods, exercise, movement, stretching, getting outside, eating better, cutting back on the alcohol, getting fluids, telling themselves a better story in terms of the psychology, better self-talk, things like that. Getting out there, contending with life, engaging with life, voluntary confrontation, and then again looking after the deeper self. They stand a much better chance of recovery. And so that's in a nutshell.
Oh, wow. Okay. So lots of things to go in here. Firstly, let's park a little bit of the conversation. I want you to talk to me about what you just said, not now, because I'm just going to step back for a second, but voluntary confrontation was something that you just said.
Yes.
So I'd definitely like to go into this. But first, you're saying if somebody's got, just if I'm summarizing correctly, somebody's got anxiety or depression, there's different modalities or methods or tools they've got for recovery. And depending on which tools and methods and paths that they take can impact the likelihood of their recovery or not. And from knowing you, I'm guessing that you're not talking down antidepressant or medication use. It's a tool and it works for
some people some of the time.
People in situations. Yeah. Some people in some situations, sure. It's one tool in the tool belt, let's say. So I know from knowing you personally, you're not against this type of stuff.
No.
You're just saying it's one tool and there are other, sometimes biological tools, and a lot of them which you went through make me really happy, and our listeners will be happy to hear this as well, because there are a lot of things that I do with people and that the listeners of this show are trying to do for themselves. Exercise, healthy eating, sleep better, hydration, all this type of stuff. Even some of the diet and exercise and gym like this adds community and social aspects to it and making new friends. And maybe it's voluntary confrontation, like you said, for somebody who's not confident in exercise to turn up to a gym, something that they find a little bit scary, and do it anyway.
Yes.
Maybe this is all going down the same path. So I was really happy to hear a lot of the things that I do with people fall into some of those categories that you just said. And I do notice, and so do my clients and just people in general and gym goers and people pursuing health and fitness, that it does have profound impacts, not only on physical body, but also on the psychology of it too. So this sounds really, really good. Where do you think we should go next in the conversation then? Do you think we should go through each of these one by one, biopsychosocial, or... And I want to get to this voluntary confrontation thing because that sounds really interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll just take it as each. So we've got the biology, and so if someone just focuses on the exercise, let's say, but again they don't do a lot of the other things, then
so there's no one tool that's
no, absolutely not. So it really is which shouldn't surprise people, but we do. So I've been down that path of just focusing completely on the psychology. And that can be, well, depressing, because when you're studying depression like I did for some time.
Very interesting.
Yeah, but that's not my opinion. That's, again, from clinical psychologists who say, if you're studying what's wrong with people all the time, like psychology did for 30 years, and didn't look at what's right with people, if all you do is look at what's wrong with you, then that's what you'll find. And so in terms of when we get to the psychology part, you've really got to look at the what's right with you as well. So
that's interesting. Can I just say something on the opposite side of it as well? Not that I'm a Hindu, but I do like Hinduism, and I've read a lot of different Hinduism things, and they have a similar but opposite perspective, where one of their paths to enlightenment, which is a different word for happiness, is studying happiness and studying how other people are happy. And they call it jnana yoga, which means it's called the path of knowledge. And it's about the more you learn and read and absorb spiritual information in their eyes and happiness information and correct ways and paths of living in life, and listen to stories of other positive people, that will impact you in a positive way and help you be more like that. You're saying it can also go the opposite way, where too much studying of the negative can what? Just bring it too much? Is it too much in your life? Is it seeping into your mind? Is it surrounding yourself with too much negativity all the time? What's doing that, do you think?
It's really simple. If you just imagine sitting and watching, well, like many people did during COVID, just sitting and watching constant news. It's just so obvious that that's ultimately. So we use the analogy of a garden. If all you're doing is getting rid of the weeds, but you're not planting actual flowers, then and so if nothing good's going in, then eventually the weeds will grow back, and so you're just weeding all the time. You're not actually. So if you want good stuff, you have to put good things in.
Interesting.
And so I think it's Harvard. One of so positive psychology, the actual literally course, positive psychology, it's one of, or if not the most subscribed to program that they have now, and it never existed, because psychology was always about what's wrong with people. It's studying what's wrong, and so that's what you'll find. And so whereas the positive psychology is not positive thinking, and we'll get onto that in the psychology part. Positive psychology is, again, in spite of what's wrong, what's still right.
That's nice.
So let's the biology.
Back to the biology. So you started on exercise.
So
just as one example.
as an example. So exercise. So one of the things that we'll come back to throughout this is the 7 neurochemicals of happiness.
Okay.
Yep. So that's adrenaline. That's dopamine. That's gamma-aminobutyric acid or GABA. That's endocannabinoids, endorphins, oxytocin, and serotonin.
Interesting. Okay. Adrenaline was an interesting one you started with then.
Yeah.
Because that would be more.
So it's a stress hormone.
Colloquially, if I could pronounce it.
Yeah. Easy for you to say.
Yeah. More with like, I wouldn't say aggression, but with high alertness and stress and stuff like that. But this is a happiness chemical.
Yeah, completely. It's stimulated during exercise, so adrenaline, dopamine.
So adrenaline junkies, this kind of thing. Doing jumps on bikes and skydiving.
So fear and excitement in the body are represented identically. In terms of fear and excitement is no different. It's the psychological part that makes it different. So yeah, adrenaline and dopamine and depending on what kind of exercise you do. So if you're pumping iron down there, you're generally exuding endorphins, so endorphin, self-induced morphine, which is a natural painkiller. Whereas if you're doing more the cardio, that's going to be endocannabinoids. So again, different exercise produces different neurochemicals. So exercise gives us 5 of the 7. So again, it gives us adrenaline, dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, endocannabinoids. So 5. So antidepressants generally only work on one molecule, which is the serotonin molecule. Whereas exercise gives us 5 of the 7 neurochemicals of happiness for free. And so that's why it's known to be as and more effective at treating mild and moderate depression as antidepressants.
Yeah, that's shown in studies, isn't it?
Yeah, it just simply is. And so the success rate at least matches antidepressants, but with a much lower relapse rate.
Can we just clap for exercise?
No.
Let's go now training.
Yeah. So exercise is easy. It's available. It's measurable. You get quick wins. In other words, one day you can do 1 mile. 2 weeks later you can do 5. So this is important because you can see yourself progressing. You can see yourself becoming more competent. That then builds in dopamine. So you've got the dopaminergic incentive reward system, which is. This is rewarding, and so we want more of that. So as long as we don't become addicted to that, then we should be okay. But what's interesting? Sorry.
No, please.
What's interesting is, and we spoke about this last time, is the rat experiment.
Yes, please explain this again.
So this was fascinating when I heard it. So very simply, there's a study with rats, and so there's 2 rats, identical scenarios. Each will have a wheel, but one of them can get in its wheel when it wants to. But when that one gets in the wheel, in this other cage, this rat is kind of forced into the wheel, so it has no option. So each of the rat is getting identical exercise, but one is stressed to hell because it's being forced into it, and the other one is getting the benefits of the exercise because it's voluntary. And so this is the thing. If we perceive that exercise is like we have to do it, it's chore, then yeah, it will probably have a different representation internally. Whereas if we feel like we want to do it, it's a good thing. So yeah, it's interesting.
So is this an autonomy or a freedom thing?
Yeah, ultimately, yeah.
Okay, that's causing one rat to feel terrible that it's forced into having to do this thing where the other one's choosing it voluntarily. Is this another form of this voluntary confrontation?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Doing a hard thing on purpose.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I loved what you said as well, because I was literally going to say the same thing. You were talking about all the happiness chemicals coming from exercise, and then I thought, and there's another side of it, which you mentioned already, of course. It's the progress side of it. As we know, progress is a primary driver of human happiness, isn't it? Yeah. It brings fulfillment in life, it gives direction, it gives purpose. And I agree, myself and many people that I've known find great fulfillment and happiness through that, even though it only seems like a small thing. Like you come into the gym, like you said, and you get tired on the treadmill in 5 minutes, but the week after you do 7.5 minutes. Or you come in and you can only do 10 press-ups on your knees, but then a couple of weeks later you're doing 15 press-ups on your knees, and you're thinking, I'm getting better at this actually. Yeah. And even if other things in your life are not progressing forward or feeling good or are breaking down or are feeling out of control or off track, this is one thing that you can control, even if it is a small thing. But the benefits from it can be absolutely massive, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, exercise, good all round, as long as we are not taking it too far, as long as we're putting the things back in again, because we can wear out. So exercise.
What do you mean? Rest enough, eat healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Refuel,
hydration, protein back in, all that.
And maybe just a quick question then: what would you recommend? Is the recommendations for mental health for exercise? Like, how much exercise do you have to do to feel good?
So there's no recommendations, but there is a watch out. So if someone is suffering from anxiety, because it does trigger adrenaline, that can sometimes in anxiety be problematic. So again, one of the key questions regularly in this talk will probably be: is it helpful or not helpful? Is it helping or not helping? And so generally it will, but again, if we become reliant upon that, we can actually, the pleasure can kind of come out of it as well. So again, as you know, people with eating disorders can sometimes use exercise as a vehicle to, so they can use it as an unhealthy coping mechanism as well.
I guess anything can be taken too far, can't it?
Yeah,
it's not a knock on exercise, it's a nod towards balance.
Yeah. So on the flip side of that, we need the relaxation as well. And so exercise can be a good stress reliever. But then we also need to switch off the sympathetic nervous system. So again, exercise is still stress. It's still actually stressing the body, but in a healthy way. So we then need to be able to switch on to relaxation as well. And so big advocate of, as you know, yoga, big advocate of what's called gradual muscle relaxation, which I do most nights if I'm waking up at silly o'clock in the morning. Like my brain decided to do at 3:30 this morning. I'm really excited about this podcast, as was my brain at 3:30.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. So I used gradual muscle relaxation to basically take the energy out of the body.
Okay, give me a little rundown of this gradual muscle.
Extraordinarily simple. So I did yoga for all the way through lockdown, nearly every single day on that for that first. Honestly, 2020. There's probably not that many days I missed in an entire year, but it takes about 20 minutes. It was bedtime yoga that I did, but it was really good. Big advocate, still do it every now and again. But gradual muscle relaxation, way faster. You can do it in bed, and so very, very simple concept. It's some guided breathing. So big deep breath in, and then I start from the toes. So as you take a big deep breath in, you literally, what I do is I pull my toes back. So I kind of imagine these are my toes. I really try and stretch them out, a bit like what a cat does when it kind of relaxes. So you breathe in, stretch, hold it a few seconds, and then you let it out. And as you let the breath out, you let the tension go. And then I curl my toes that way. So breathe in, curl, that's that. I will then breathe in, feet pointed down, so really stretching those muscles. Then I'll do the same thing, let that out, breathe in, feet back. Then I'll press my feet down into the heels down into the bed. So I've literally got my butt off the bed and I'm breathing in, so like a big arch off the bed, and then let it out. Then I will tense my thighs, deep breath in, tense. And then lastly, generally the glutes, the big muscles, I'll breathe in and I will really clench those cheeks like nothing you've ever known. I imagine an army boot camp commander kind of going, come on Nixon, get those things clenched. But they're the big muscles. And so I recognise that's where a lot of my tension's held. And so what that does is it basically takes the tension out of the body. And so tension is going to be in two places, in the mind and in the body. And so when you are relaxing both of them at the same time, generally by the time I get to the quads, I'm starting to yawn, and then that nearly always gets me back to sleep, nearly every single time. That's gradual muscle relaxation, very easy. It takes 3 minutes. And you can do it in bed.
Sounds very good. It sounds natural as well, because everybody knows this feeling of wanting to go for a big stretch, and you stretch everything, and then you go.
Yeah.
And then you feel a little bit more relaxed, don't you? So it's a tension followed by a physical relaxation, which is nice. Yeah.
So breath work. Again, I learned it a long time ago. I've trained police hostage negotiators in this technique. I've trained thousands of people now over the last 6-7 years since I began on my journey. So we need sleep. We need to cut down on stimulants. We need some relaxation in there, and then also the environment. Nature is a brilliant thing for the biology. So getting out there, vitamin D, fresh air. And then diet. Okay, diet, a big one. I actually brought 3 boxes of cereal here today. I forgot them. They're in the car. Oh, it's fine. I can remember the numbers. The gut. So this is probably the most important topic as I see it in terms of people's diet. Everyone knows what they should eat, but do they eat it? A lot of the time, no. But dietary fibre, I really want to kind of talk about that, dietary fibre.
Yeah.
Okay. So very simple. We all know we're supposed to eat certain foods, and so the kind of the least good ones for us are what we call simple carbs, which is the kind of highly refined carbs, which is white bread, white potato, white pasta, white rice, all those things. So they're very simple, and so they get into the small intestine, and the small intestine is very good at breaking that down. So very quickly, all that's broken down in the small intestine. And what that does, you've got the small intestine and the large intestine, the colon. There are 100 trillion bacteria in our colon. That's where nearly all our microbiome is in the colon. 99% of a human's genome is actually bacterial. We are 1% human. And so this gut, this colon is critical. So if we're eating poor foods, not very fibrous foods, what happens is the large intestine is starved of what it actually needs. So the large intestine has a mucus lining. It's made of complex carbohydrates, and what that does is it keeps the unhealthy bacteria away from the lining of the gut. So if we're not eating the right foods, so that mucus lining, again, it's complex carbs. It's made of complex carbs. If we don't feed it, if we don't have dietary fibre in our diet, it starts to basically break down and eat itself because it's got no other source of dietary fibre. So when we do eat dietary fibre, what that does, the human genome is really bad. We don't create the enzymes basically to break down complex carbs. So it makes it into the colon intact, and the large intestine can break it down. So what it does, it ferments it down, and it creates these very small molecules called microbiota metabolites. Big word. I've managed to say it right probably for the first time ever. And what they do is they basically get into our stomach, and that's how our gut bacteria affects our health systemically. Okay, so our body gets these complex carbs, it breaks it down, and then it sends that into the body, into the system. But what it also does, it reinforces the bacterial wall in the gut. And that's why we're supposed to eat dietary fibre. So if I've got cornflakes, they've got about 2 grams per 100 grams of fibre.
Sure.
Very poor.
Sure.
Shreddies, whole wheat shreddies have got 12%. 12%. So 12 grams per 100 grams.
Yes.
So they are literally 6 times more fibre.
Yes. Do you know how I know this, like, personally? Because if I eat too much of certain types of fibres, I have IBS and it upsets my stomach.
Yes.
And I can eat cornflakes and I can't eat shreddies.
Yes.
Because I'll get stomachache.
Yeah. So yeah, some people. So literally. So what I would really recommend doing is just like anxiety. So again, voluntary confrontation, graduated exposure. So just like people can now go up the milk ladder and become free from lactose intolerance, because some of my daughter's friends have done that at school, who were completely lactose intolerant, and now they can have anything with milk in. So they've gone up the milk ladder.
That doesn't work for everybody, though, I will say.
Okay, and again, that's fine. I don't pretend to be a medical expert in that,
Sure.
which, as you know, I'm not. But in general, and so very simply, a poor lack of fibre in the diet increases the risk of all-cause mortality. So when you look at death and you look at the person's fibre, less fibre equals less health in general, and so a 10-gram increase of fibre results in a 10% decrease in the risk of all-cause mortality, which is pretty serious.
Listen, I love all this information. As a nutritionist, I appreciate all this. This is absolutely amazing. I'm on board with all this. I'm always telling people, you better eat more goddamn vegetables.
Yeah.
I spend my life telling people to eat more fruit and
beans, whole food. So the brown pasta, everything I eat is brown. It really is. Rarely do I eat a white thing. So diet, really, really important. Okay, so we've got diet, exercise, sleep, relaxation, so stress management, so really important, and we're going to talk about that in various forms. So again, can you reduce stress generation, and if not, can you then basically use coping techniques to deal with stress? Okay, so the biology. I think that covers the biology, and I'm sure I'll hark back.
Yeah, that was amazing. So to go through them, we need stress management techniques. This is important. Medication plays a role. This affects your biology. We've got exercise as an important factor. You said sleep's an important factor. This has been very popular in science recently, hasn't it? New sleep science. Very, very popular in the last 10 years or so. Lots of new sleep science coming out about how important it is. To the point where some people rank sleep as the most important controllable variable. It depends who you talk to and what people's biases are and what weight you put on things. But some people, even like some nutritionists, say that sleep could be considered as more important than different dietary methods and stuff like this. So, but to me, they're all equal and they're all different players. And I would encourage people, and I'm sure you would too as well, to not listen to all those and think, oh my God, what? I need to sort out my sleep. I need to stress less. I need to eat better. I need to exercise. I need more fiber. You can just start on one. Just do one.
So a really important point there. So in my notes, I've got this little C at the side of all these different things. So you can control your diet. You can control exercise.
Yes.
You can control relaxation. And most of them, what you can't control is sleep. And if you try, you'll probably actually finish doing the opposite. Because if you have sleep anxiety, like I have suffered with in the past, then you'll be thinking, I have to control my sleep. Well, you can't. And so it's a little bit like trying to stop thinking. The more you try and stop thinking, the more you'll probably think about it. Whereas, so the trick is not to focus on trying to get good sleep. The trick when you basically are waking up in the middle of the night is to place your focus on something, and that focus is relaxation. So again, I'm a big, so I was doing it last night, transcendental meditation, which sounds, I would say, ridiculously complicated.
It's a long word for a simple thing, isn't it?
It's ridiculously simple. So I have 3 words which won't mean anything to anybody, and that's the point. Shentapa, Solfenta, and Serengatu. Those words don't mean anything, and because they don't mean anything, when you say them over and over again, your brain literally has no reference point. It gets bored, it changes its brainwave, and the brainwave that it moves into is more akin to the sleep brainwave.
So it's a mantra meditation style.
Yeah, basically. Or one of the other things I do is literally say yes. Yes, because when, again, if you study the yes and no brain, yes brain state and no brain state, it's fascinating. So yeah, when you just say yes over again, that's got very good kind of connotations in the mind. And so the brain thinks good things are happening, and it's relaxing. Or I just say yes, thank you, yes, thank you over and over again.
That's nice, a little bit of gratitude for it.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
Whereas if you're kind of, if you just imagine someone saying no, that's stressful.
Just sounds worse.
Yeah, it does.
This makes sense.
And so they've done this in big audiences where they just keep saying the word. So the key thing there, again, it's just like you can't stop thinking, you can change your focus. And so it's all about that change of focus onto the breathing, onto the body. Again, when you're doing gradual muscle relaxation, you focus on 2 things. And the brain can't do that very well and think of a third. So that's why breath, body generally equals getting back to sleep.
That sounds really nice. I do a little bit of I guess it would be a meditation, but a breathing sort of practice if I'm struggling to fall to sleep or need to calm my brain down. My focus is I do a deep breath in and a long breath out, and every time I try and focus on making the one after just slightly slower or longer than the one before. So gradually over a few minutes, my breaths will get really slow, really long, really slow, with big gaps in between the in and out as well. Then I feel after a minute or 2 of this, very, very relaxed. This is like using a physical practice to literally calm the nervous system down, but also giving my brain something to focus on, which is not the whirrings of life and your problems and did you lock the door and what about this tomorrow and is the alarm set and oh my God, and all this type of stuff. Really good. I liked what you said as well about not being able to focus on the sleep directly, but I'm sure you would agree as well there are things you can do to help you sleep, like stress management, these calming techniques, exercising throughout the day, tire the body out, that'll help you fall to sleep a little bit. Some people find different dietary patterns help them sleep better or worse. Like for me, if I eat before bed, I sleep really well. I'll if I eat a big meal, I'll want to go to sleep so fast. Some people are the opposite. They don't digest well and they feel uncomfortable. So sometimes playing with different things. There's things about less stimulation before bed can help, can't it? Like an hour before, try and chill, try and not be like watching explosive movies or stuff like this.
Sex. Sex. So not having arguments, and then if you've got if you've got the opportunity for sex. So sex is, again, we've got 3 things. So strenuous exercise, laughter, and sex basically generate endorphins. So endorphin, self-induced morphine, natural painkiller, and so you've got that. Also an oxytocin as well, skin on skin contact. really good for the heart. It's a relaxation molecule. It's literally the cuddle hormone, it's called. So again, avoiding arguments, things like that. But just a good technique for getting to sleep is the opposite of trying to get to sleep, which is trying to stay awake. So actually trying to stay awake is way more effective at getting you to sleep. Completely. You try it. You try it tonight. You just literally try and keep your eyes open, and before you know it, you will be asleep. But you try and get. So yeah, it's so that I do that quite regularly. I could do an entire podcast just on breath work. I love the topic. I take people through it on most of the mental health courses that I deliver, and it's a favourite topic. But just in the interest of time, if you don't mind, I'll move on to psychology.
I think we should, because we could do 30 minutes or an hour on each of those individual biological methods, couldn't we? But really good. All right, so what's the next one? Is it psychology?
Yeah, so we've got BioPsychoSocial model. Again, spirituality is in there, but because it's a medical model, that's why I'll generally call it the BioPsychoSocial model, because it's an actual medical model, which is, again, if you're just focusing on one aspect, but you're ignoring the others, then again, recovery is relatively unlikely or less likely. But there's a spiritual aspect. But psychology, okay, as you know, I'm fascinated by it. I know you are. Very simple. And as somebody that's accessing counselling, as you know, as we speak. If I've got a problem with my tooth, I'll go to the dentist, and if I've got an issue psychologically, then I'll just arrange some counselling. This is the third time that I've accessed counselling, and it's a guy in Sheffield, and again, he's fantastic. Sometimes we do struggle to cope, and sometimes our mind can be problematic, and it can give us a tough time. So I think one of the key things, just in case, let's imagine I lost the thread here. Fundamentally, we think in language, and so our brain uses language to think things through. So ultimately, we're talking about thoughts, our repetitive thoughts. Maybe it could be images that we're kind of imagining, and then it's generally self-talk. So basically what we're saying and thinking and kind of imagining, that's our psychology, isn't it? And that can be helpful. So again, if you're a positive person, you might have very healthy self-talk. But what I find is, and even for normal people who've got no mental health issues, there's a complete negativity bias in the psychology, which is obvious why it's there. And so people think we're talking about positive thinking sometimes, and we're really not. So they've got a busy road just behind here. And if you're thinking positive, that would look like, I'll think positive, I'll just imagine the car's not hitting me. You're going to get killed. Okay. It's very simple. and so the brain has a complete negativity bias on purpose, and it's the only reason any one of the listeners out there is alive, is because their brain has a negativity bias.
For survival, is this what you said?
For survival.
Okay.
So the question is this thinking that we're doing at the moment, is this actually, is there a genuine survival situation? Most of the time it's no. Okay. And so if it's not a genuine survival situation, and again, people in the Ukraine, they almost better be thinking negatively for obvious reasons.
In case the worst outcomes occur. So you're talking about maybe like anxiety being thoughts of the future with unknown outcomes. So you're thinking, oh, what about this? What if this happens? What if that happens? It could lead to what could be called like catastrophizing, or some people might call it overthinking. But really what you're saying is this is a natural way of the brain planning for maybe negative outcomes to try and avoid them. So it's like a natural thing that's built in. But now we've got to assess whether this is really helpful or not helpful, I think you termed it.
Completely, good summary.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. So one of the kind of key questions here is, again, is my brain actually trying to help me? So even if it's really unhelpful thinking at 3:00 in the morning, which this morning's wasn't, it was just my brain trying to, think what are you going to say? Even though I always know what I'm going to say.
Do you find that all that planning, most of the time, I might say this, and what if this question, then I'll say this. I remember doing this really badly for some interviews, for some jobs in the past, don't forget to say this, and then it never goes like that.
Yeah.
Do you notice? I don't find it completely unuseful, this level of planning. I think it does help to some level, but you've got to be careful not to try and over-plan everything, because when you turn up in the situation, often this conversation wouldn't go like what either of me, we would both been thinking about this conversation separately, imagining what it might be like, I'm sure. both imagining different scenarios, neither of which will occur when we actually get together, which is funny, isn't it?
Yeah. But I always try and tailor the conversation to the audience. So that's why I tend to sort of think who I'm going to be speaking to, and then what bits I might use and what bits I might leave out. But yeah, very simply, we've got this negativity bias, and that's useful. Okay, but the trick is then to think is when it's not useful. But what I do in all cases, whether it's useful or not, is I actually thank my brain. Just because, and this is one of the key things in anxiety, people get anxious about anxious thinking. And so they think about, what if this happens, and they get themselves wrapped up in a negative loop. And so they become anxious at their own anxiety. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whereas, and I was talking to a lady just about this the other day, she was kind of getting herself stressed about stressful thinking. And I said, what you've got to realize is your brain is completely trying to help you here. It's just trying to think through some of the possible scenarios to try and help you in advance. It's just doing a really bad job of it. And so a Buddhist acronym is something called RAIN, which is R-A-I-N, which is to be able to recognize, which is the R, recognize the unhelpful thinking. It's to just allow it to be there, that's the A. The I is to investigate it again. Is it useful? Is it trying to actually help me out here? Is this something that, so I always use the story of I had a lump taken out of my breast when I was 19. So if I just thought, oh, it'll be fine, that's not a good strategy, because it could be cancerous, obviously. I'm lucky it turned out not to be, but I've got relatives who it was cancer and they've had breast cancer. So the investigation is there something useful here? Is this something I need to act upon? But if we kind of say, no, it really is just my brain not being very helpful. And so I use a Mark Nixonism, which is it new? Is it you? And is it true?
What do you say? New, you?
Is it new? Is it you? And is it true?
Okay.
So the is it you part is this you genuinely thinking this, or is it just your brain doing a washing machine thing going round and round? And that's what it is most of the time. So A, it's not you, unless you really were sat there trying to think this thing. So generally it's not us. Is it new? Probably not. It's probably the thing you were thinking about yesterday, or last year, or whatever, or even 10 years ago in some people's cases. So this thing that happened to me 10 years ago, we're still going over it like it's really happening. So is it you? Is it new? And is it true? Well, it can't be true. Why not? Because it's not happening right now. So if it was in the past, it's not happening now. And if it's in the future, it hasn't happened. So it can't be true. And so anything that's about the past isn't true because it's gone. It does not exist anymore. And anything about the future cannot be true because if you think you can tell the future, give me the lottery numbers and I will be completely
They're both just imagination, aren't they?
They're both imaginary. And so the N in RAIN is non-identification.
I'm glad you got to that because I was wondering, I was thinking, what's the N?
And I'm glad you were intrigued.
What did you say again?
Non-identification.
Non-identification.
It's just.
Oh, so not identification.
It's just the brain. It's just the brain.
So do the RAIN again.
So recognize what's got. So recognize the thought. Okay.
Allow.
So just like we've got these clouds, we've got a lovely view out of here, and we've got the clouds going across the entire of pretty much South Yorkshire, and so we can you've got this cloud coming in. So just like a thought comes in, like a cloud, and you allow it to be there. We don't try and get rid of the clouds. We investigate it. Is it going to rain, or is the sun going to pop out? So we investigate this unhelpful thinking, and then we non-identify. In other words, that really is most of the time just our brain doing what it does, which is to think. And so when we have a much better relationship with our own thinking, which is, it really is trying to help me, but in this case it's not being that helpful, then what we can do is just have a little bit of a softer response to our own mind. Okay, people out there really do sometimes think they're going mad. They're not going mad. The brain can just get itself negative. And so stressful life events ramp up the possibility of anxiety and depression, and so it's about trying to, again, so basically anxiety is stress, unhelpful thinking is stressful thinking, so it's just about then trying to focus on other things, again, relaxation methods. So this brings me to the next point, which is, excuse me, what's right with us? Okay, and the analogy I heard from someone else, we're imagining a big ball of plasticine, big orange ball of plasticine.
Okay.
And so, but in this ball of plasticine is a bit of blue plasticine, a small bit. So the blue plasticine represents what's not right with us, and that might be something from our past. that we can't do anything about. That might be something that's going to happen in the future that's inevitable. Like loss of a loved one, okay? Or we might have cancer or a serious health issue, or we might be losing our job. So there's this blue stuff in there, okay? And we might not be able to get rid of it. It might be, let's say, a serious health condition that won't get better. So the blue's potentially always in there. But can we build what's right with us at the same time? Wow. So it really is, can we focus on what's right with us? And I know I've shared this before, but I have a relative, in my family who has gone through, removal of a breast due to breast cancer, and so you can imagine someone in that instance. It's very easy to think about them focusing on what's wrong with me and all the implications of that. She should write a book, because what she was able to do is focus on, okay, I can't do anything about this, and there was lots of other things at that time, and this was right in the middle of COVID, so she had to properly lock down, couldn't go out, couldn't go anywhere, so constantly having to rely on people delivering things to her because of the immune system and all that. But what she was able to do is focus on, okay, but what can I do? What is still right with me? What have I still got? And that's positive psychology. It's not positive thinking, because again, positive thinking is, I haven't got cancer when you have.
Sometimes delusional.
It's delusional, yeah. That's just blind optimism, and this is what we're not advocating.
Blind optimism is a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, it's blind optimism.
Yeah. Which could be avoidance of the truth and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Which is, again, there's no cost of living crisis, which there is,
Interesting.
So this is positive, extracting the positives. So this is taking the positives out of what can even be a flipping terrible situation. But yeah, but human beings get through things. This is the key thing. And so I remember speaking to a lady in a petrol station, and it was January 2021, and it was just about when the government were going to announce whether we were going to go back into lockdown or not. And I knew she got anxiety because we'd spoken a few times, and she said, I can't cope with it again. And I said, okay, imagine you've never heard of COVID and the whole COVID thing never happened. And I'd have said to you as an anxiety sufferer, this is what you're going to go through with regards to COVID. You can't go there, you can't do this, you can't see those people, person in hospital dying, you can't go and see them, you can't attend funerals, all this. Could you cope? Could you cope with that? And she said, I would have said, no, completely, I can't cope with that. What's the evidence, I asked her. And the evidence was like kind of blinding suddenly. I did, didn't I? And she said that. I did, didn't I? Yes, and you can again. And so that the
Because
brain
she made it through.
Yeah.
She did do it.
Yeah, completely.
Even though she thought she couldn't.
And
She was stood there in front of you.
Single mother.
Post situation.
Yeah, post situation. Yeah. So what we have to do is look at the evidence. So the brain will tell us this terrible worst case scenario story, and that's fine. Okay. So I've got my best strategy approach. So the best strategy approach is, what is the worst case? Okay. So again, you get a lump in your breast. Worst case is, it could be, something serious. What's the best case scenario? Well, it's nothing. What's the most likely? I don't know. So that's what the investigation part is. But what's the best strategy anyway? So that's why I call it my best strategy approach. It was, whatever it is, what's the best strategy anyway? What's the best way of thinking about this, perceiving it? What is the best way of internalizing this? In other words, how am I going to talk to myself about this? What is the kind of, what are the potential stories, going forward? Will this define me? And so this is one of my favorite questions, is what is going to define me? What story am I going to be telling about this? Because this is what the psychology is. It's stories. It's stories about ourselves, and three things. It's stories about us, stories about other people, and stories about the world. Okay, there's three things there. Okay, and so a lot of people in anxiety at the moment who still haven't got over COVID, that they're still struggling with the fact that their belief is the world's different somehow because of COVID, and it's really affected them. Whereas when you start to look at the evidence is the world's pretty much gone back to how it was. And when you really think about it, the world's fine. It's just people who are doing different things. Remove human beings for a moment.
You mean the world as in nature, the world itself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there are trillions of organisms out there, and we're just this one species. Like a few billion. It's literally a few billion. Remove us, the world's fine.
I noticed this during COVID. There was a part where the idea was to go shopping and get stuff for a while and then stay at home and try not to go places. So like get some food in, stay at home. I didn't go outside for a good few days, maybe 3 or 4 days. I literally didn't go outside.
Yeah.
And I was getting real stressed about things, not necessarily due to that, but it was just a difficult time for everybody, wasn't it? And then at one point I thought I didn't even realize that I wasn't going outside. I just wasn't. I wasn't going to the gym. I wasn't going to the shops. I wasn't visiting friends. I wasn't doing this. So I was just in working online. After a few days, I realized I'd not been outside, went for a walk. And as soon as I walked outside and I heard the birds chirping, my first thought was, oh shit, the birds have got no idea about COVID.
Great point. Great point.
Literally, my first thought was the birds have got no idea. And I thought, oh.
There we go. This little fella, he's got no idea of COVID. He's got no idea of the past. He's got no idea of the future. Nature only knows now. It really is. It's that simple.
Except for us.
Nature has no concept of the future or the past. They are human concepts that don't exist anywhere else other than in brains in humans.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that sometimes.
For this future predicting mechanism to try and create
Completely.
survival and control outcomes.
Yeah, and so we have to think about the future. You know, you have to know where you're going to get petrol from and where the next meal's coming from and things like that. That's fine. But again, the future, what we have to do is have future positives. So again, this is another key thing for me. You've got to have some future positives. So this, you know, I noticed my psychology improved just knowing I was coming to do this podcast with you. Just knowing that we're going to meet up, you know, makes me feel better. And this is kind of starting to head towards the sociology thing now. But just staying on the psychology for a moment. Really important for people out there, because when I first heard, well, not read this, I first read this. So it was a book I was reading called Self-Compassion in Psychotherapy. And the foreword to this book is by one of the Times Most 100 people in the world, Dr. Richard Davison, who's at the forefront of positive psychology. So yeah, it's this simple phrase, which is self-criticism is one of the biggest predictors of serious mental health issues. I'll say it again. Self-criticism is one of the single biggest predictors of serious mental health issues. So it's really, really important. So there's a term here. It's called psychoneuroimmunology. Okay, psycho of the mind, neuro of the brain, and then we've got our immune system. Okay, so again, 90% of which is in our gut. Okay, and so what? I'll see if I can do this. I don't know how this is going to work. Possibly. I'll try not to spill it. But we've got the fight-flight response. Okay, so upper body, which you've got a lot more of than I have. Lower body, which I'm a cyclist, and so I've got good. So I can run, and you can fight probably. So basically we've got these upper body and this lower body, and then we've got this bit in the middle, which is basically the digestive system. And so stress, fundamentally, we need to get rid of the blood from the digestive system and borrow it to put in the big muscles, and so that's fine. But what we will do the moment we get stressed is we will suspend digestion, we will interrupt digestion, and we will lower our immune system because we need to borrow the blood from the immune system, 90% of which is in the gut. Okay, so what's that got to do with thinking? Very simple. Okay, so if we put anybody in the brain scanner and get them thinking about things, the blood will move to certain areas of the brain depending on what we're thinking about. So if we're thinking about other people, very specific brain areas will light up in the brain. I say light up, the blood will move there. And so thoughts are real things. They're not wishy-washy things. Psychology is not some kind of thoughts are real genuine things in terms of they create blood flow in the brain. And then the brain's got to decide, there's a part in the brain called the hypothalamus. So people know about the amygdala in terms of the fear center, but that's got to get triggered by something. And so that something is the hypothalamus, which is this a stressful thought or not? And so if it's a stressful thought, guess what? So if you have a foodie thought, if you're sat there thinking about food, you will start to basically create enzymes in the mouth.
Definitely.
If you're a lady who's breastfeeding and you start to think about breastfeeding your baby, you will start lactating. And so it's that real. So thoughts, again, psychoneuroimmunology. So our thoughts can affect our immune system. So it's really critical that we're thinking that we can have what we call constructed, planned narratives. You've heard me talk about these many times. So these are positive things that we can say to ourselves and often used in response to unhelpful thinking, okay? Unhelpful kind of self-talk. So again, athletes do this all the time. I always talk about Usain Bolt on the start line of the 100 meters. Okay. What story is he telling himself? He doesn't know if he's going to win, but he's telling himself a good story. Muhammad Ali was just the almost like he didn't create them, but he could almost. But when he said, "I'm going to win." And I'll win in the 5th, and I'll win by knockout. And he was nearly always right. He didn't predict the future. He was just that determined on what he was going to do. And that's a constructed, planned narrative, okay? Which is you put it together in advance, and it's a story. So just some of the things that I like to say is basically, I'll handle it. I've handled everything in my life so far, and just for people listening, everybody who's listening to this, and I know something about every single person out there right now, even though I haven't met you. And that something is this. You have handled everything up to this point in your life so far. How do I know that? Because you're still here. And so it's such an important point. So people put themselves down and say, I didn't handle this and I didn't handle that. You did. You did. You're still here. And so it's really, really important. So challenge and difficulty, they make us strong. They really do. You can't be strong without some resisting force. You know that in weight training. Imagine trying to get strong by lifting nothing. So you need...
But you're saying it's the same with the mind.
You need an opposing force, yeah.
Wow.
And so adversity makes us smarter and more prepared. Setbacks make us step up and make us raise our standards. We're strong. You're strong. We're strong. I don't think we are. I know we are. Human beings are incredibly resilient creatures. We always have, always can, always will be able to learn, change, overcome, move out of our comfort zone, conquer and grow. We've done it our entire lives. Is this thing in your life going to be the thing that stops you? Hell no. Hell no. And so what can we tell ourselves about this thing? What will I be defined by? How I gave up or how I carried on? So Einstein gave me one of the best quotes I've ever heard, which is, do you live in a friendly or a hostile world? That comes from Einstein. And so,
is this about what perception of what happens to you?
Yeah, if you're going out there and that's a hostile world, then why wouldn't you have a stress response? Why wouldn't you be thinking terrible things and having bad thinking? And so again, it's how can you start to look at what's the evidence? And so this lady I was talking to with anxiety, I said, okay, go out there right now and find some people, whatever colour, creed, race, religion, sexuality, doesn't matter. Most of the people out there are nice people if you go and interact with them. And so the evidence of what people are actually like is very different. And this is why the news is something to stop watching completely if you can. It will just try and divide us. And so we have to be very wary of people who are trying to divide us. So so a lot of people have got this major problem with other people. And so go out there, find out, go and talk to them. Most people are nice people trying to do the right thing most of the time.
And it's not the news's fault necessarily, but they're playing into that negativity bias you spoke about earlier, aren't they?
Completely.
They're just... Good news doesn't sell as well because the bad news, your brain locks onto it and is trying to protect you, thinking, oh, what if this is an issue?
As much as I'm not a royalist, at least the kind of whole royal thing, it was some good news for a change.
Some good news.
It was some actual
Do you remember there was only
news.
Russell Howard doing good news? I think even he quit. Even he gave it in. He tried to fly the flag. He did it for a long time.
He did.
Russell Howard's good news.
He did.
Yeah, bless him. I was like, yes. Let's go, boy.
So let's have a look at ourselves. What's right with me? What can I do? What is within my power? What's within my control? Look at other people. What's right with them? And look at the world. What's right with the world? And so it's really about starting to look at what's right with us, take into consideration what's wrong, and again, is there anything we can change and control? Great, do it. But if not, okay. So there's a very blunt phrase for this, which is deal with it or get over it. It's blunt, I'm sorry, it's horrible, but it's true. There are some things we can deal with and there are some things we can't. And so for the things that we can't deal with, losing a loved one, I'm not telling people to get over.
Dealing with, you mean physically sorting it out,
so
fixing the issue.
A leaking roof, you lose a job, I've been made redundant, I've had a leaking roof, you've got to sort those things out. So that's called adaptive coping, where it's got a real world solution and you just got to get on with it. So get yourself a nice plan, get some steps in place, okay? So either ring the roofer or get up there and sort it out yourself. And you might need a professional, so you might need some professional help, again, in terms of psychology, talking therapy, or losing a loved one. That's not a problem to be fixed. It's an emotional thing to be dealt with. And so what we've then got to do is come to terms. And this is what professional help can help us do. Counselling and psychotherapy can help us come to terms with loss and bereavement. It might be the loss of physical health in some way. And so yeah, but ultimately we've got things we can cope with, and then we've got things that we might need help coping with. And some of those emotional focusing techniques, again, are talking to people. And this brings us on to the social aspect. So should we move on to the social part?
Yeah, can I just make a few comments? Firstly, you blow my mind. You've made way too many good points that I just can't comment on them all. And I'm just not
You'll have to listen to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm just not surprised because it's just you being you all the time. So I'm just going to just lower the comments. So many fucking good points. Literally, you're giving me goosebumps at times. I'm thinking I should write this down. I'm thinking I want to comment on that. I can't even. Too many good things. That was literally an amazing speech. So thank you. I loved what you said about, will this define me?
I love that phrase.
God, I think that's so powerful on its own.
From David Goggins, fundamentally.
That's a lot on its own.
One of my heroes.
Just will it define me?
Yeah.
I love what you said then about, I have a similar stress management sort of teaching method, let's call it, I call it deal with it or cope with it.
Yeah.
This is what I try and teach people. Some things we can deal with, like some people's physical health problems that upset them. This is my job.
Yeah.
They can lose weight, they can feel better, we can eat better, we can start doing positive things, we can deal with some of the problems. The other things that you can't directly fix, we need coping mechanisms and strategies to live with them, kind of
Come
thing.
to terms. Yeah.
And the last thing I'd like to say is just for people listening, because one thing, what was your phrase that you said? Self-criticism is one of the biggest predictors of
serious mental health issues.
Of serious mental health issues. So then somebody might be thinking, okay, Mark, or okay, us, how do we go from then this negative self-talk or this negative outlook to this positive outlook?
Yes.
And I will say that I don't know,
Yep.
but I do know that it can be done because it's happened to me.
Yeah.
Literally. I can literally remember in the past when my brain used to have the same negative bias and the same catastrophic thinking, and if this happens, then what if it goes like this, and what if this is bad, and then this could happen.
Yep.
And it would do that all the time.
Yep.
And to be honest, I think part of me getting out of that was probably its practice, like you said, I think my job helped me a lot, because my job is to see people's problems from an external perspective, reframe them in a positive light, and then start them moving forward. Even in a very basic, just health-focused ways, it's just like eating a bit better and exercise. But I'm literally used to absorbing people's problems, analysing them, helping them see areas that could be changed, and then moving forward from that. And I think I've done that for so many years. And you spoke a lot about what seemed like slowing down, rational thinking, logical thinking, identify the emotion, analyse the emotion, non-identification with the emotion, which is really nice, isn't it? Because thoughts come and go, emotions come and go, but we stay below. It's always us underneath while they come and go, isn't it? So I think this is really powerful. And I will say that I don't know the exact strategies. I couldn't outline for somebody what you should do to go from one place to another. Okay. But I know that it can be done because it's happened to me.
Yeah, and you're speaking to someone, as you know, who's had a suicidal crisis. So I've had to pick up that phone from a hotel room, where I was working up in Newcastle. And I say crazy, but what's really interesting is, I was actually delivering mental health courses for a client up in the northeast at the time when I had this crisis. So that is, and for anybody out there, so suicidal thinking is not unusual. It's 1 in 5 people. So if anybody out there is having really unhelpful thinking to the point of that you should end your life, it's really important to know that's not you. It's your brain in an ill state. And so I'm fortunate that I had the foresight to know that. So basically, really stressful events, and again, think about the kind of what we're doing at the moment in terms of the cost of living, the food prices, petrol prices, energy prices, all that kind of thing. There's a lot of conditions there for thinking to turn negative, because it's a stressful thing, and the brain gets to the point where it thinks, okay, well, and it might give you that conclusion that you can't cope, and so so suicide is something I talk about, and we have to talk about, because I've been to that edge literally, but I also train people how to have this conversation with other people around suicide.
And you've also helped people come back from that edge as well.
As you know, that's the only reason we know each other.
It is originally.
It's the only reason we know each other. It really is. We probably wouldn't know each other if it wasn't for that exact thing. So yeah, it's just important that people know that they're not mad, and it's just the brain doing what it does, but it just gets itself in a real negative loop, and it can go that far. So it's really important that you speak to somebody, and a genuine offer here. If anybody out there who's listening to this is on that and they want some help and they don't know where to go, they can get in touch with me through you, and that's a 100% genuine offer. So if anybody out there needs to take us up on that, you get in touch with Connor, and I have that conversation on a reasonably regular basis with people, and I'm trained to do that. Okay. So what can you do? How empty is this can, Connor?
Half.
Empty enough, that's fine.
Is it?
I think so. Yeah, it should be. Okay. So
that was confident to just lay it on its side like that.
So, okay, I'm going to just drop something on here. I'm going to drop a drop of fluid on this can, and I want you to guess which way it's going to roll, towards me or towards that.
Really?
Yeah, which way is it going to go?
Am I guessing before you even
Yeah,
move?
which way?
Towards you.
Towards me, okay.
You can now adjust
I
where
can't.
you drop it.
I'm really going to try and do this fairly. There's a point to this, all right? Okay. So I'm going to try and drop. You see, it's not going anywhere. So I'm not fixing this.
I feel like you're fixing it.
I'm not. Okay. Okay.
It's going up.
That's okay.
Fix.
Right. Now I'm going to drop it in the exact same place. Which way is it going to go?
I don't know.
It's going to go exactly the same way. I
Is
can
it really?
guarantee. Yeah. Because
for
I didn't even
for
get
people
there,
listening, it went away. It went the opposite of the way I said it
okay.
should go.
And so this should very quickly go. You see, it's already going. Okay. It's already going. There it goes. Okay. Yeah. So what you've got there is you've got a path. Okay, you've got a path, and it's a path that, because you've got tiny little fragments of fluid on that can still, you've got a little pathway that makes it easier. So I'm actually travelling down to Gloucester this afternoon to do an environmental spill course for a client tomorrow. It's one of the big banks. So we're always looking at what's called source pathway receiver. Okay, what's the source? What's the path, and where's it going? So once you've actually got a wet floor, fluid travels through that a lot faster once it's already wet. So what's that got to do with this? Very simple. Thinking, okay, is a pathway through the brain, and the more we think certain thoughts, the basically. So okay, put your fist down. Okay, so these represent neurons, and neurons, brain cells, don't touch each other, and so you've got these little substances. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that's used in between these the ends of the nerve cells, and so a signal comes along here.
Just describe for people listening. So we've got our fists and arms out, but we're not quite fist
not quite
bumping.
touching.
We're 2 inches away from fist bumping.
So this is how antidepressants work actually. So serotonin is one of the main mood molecules. It makes us feel less bad, a bit better, and so antidepressants work by stopping the uptake. So serotonin's popped in there, and antidepressants, SSRIs, so it's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It basically stops serotonin being mopped back up once it's been put into the middle of this thing, and that's why we feel better, because it leaves the serotonin hanging around. Okay, but in this case, so electricity comes down here, it puts a chemical in there, that one gets it, and it carries on the electrical charge. So that's happening right now in every single brain on Earth, and it happens in a split second. And what happens is, the more we think a certain thing, just like this pipe, with this electrical pipe here, the more we think it, that pathway actually gets insulated, as you know, with a substance called myelin. It's called myelination.
Yeah.
And what that does, it basically increases the likelihood of having the same thoughts. So the more we're thinking, the more we think those thoughts, and the easier it is for those signals to travel down those pathways.
Interesting.
Okay.
So this is what happened to me then. So I used to be in negative thinking pathways, and then over time I've speaking to people like you, counselling, reading positive things, being around positive people, helping people in positive ways. That was funny. This has helped me stay in a more positive position, you think, afterwards?
So it's just like these big fields we've got behind us here. Just don't know if you can quite see, so you can see a little bit of greenery. They're just in the back there, around about here. Okay, can't do it. So there we go, in the back. So there's paths. And so when you walk through a path, and the more people walk through it, the more that path gets laid down. People stop walking along that way. Before you know it, the grass has come back. And so what we have to do is, again, don't try and stop thinking. Don't try and stop thinking. You can't, it's impossible. What you need to do is replace those unhelpful, negative, unhealthy thoughts with basically constructed planned narratives. In other words, again, what's right with me? What's right with the world? What can I do? How have I succeeded in the past? Where can I get help? So it's really important that we identify what's unhelpful in our psychology, and replace those thinking, replace those thoughts, replace that self-talk, replace those behaviours with better ones. And over a period of time, just like taking a different path down through a field of grass, you will basically take the brain activity in a different direction. So this is really important. It doesn't happen overnight. It can't happen overnight, but it's a gradual thing. And again, it's in concert with all these other things. So again, the biology, it's all those biological things we talked about. Okay, so that's how we do it. We do it a bit at a time. We do it a bit at a time, where we just basically recognize, and again, don't beat yourself up about having unhelpful thoughts. It's about recognizing that it's not us. Again, it's not you. It's not new. And is it true? Probably not. Okay, so what is? So what is you thinking? What do you want to think? Okay, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? So get some new thinking. And then, again, if it's about the future, it's not true, but it's a better story. It's a better story. So again, what will we be defined by? Again, will we be defined by how we kind of, basically kept thinking the same things? Or will we be defined by the fact that, we took hold of this, we took hold of our future, and we changed it? Okay.
Wow.
Let's get onto the sociology side, because I really want to...
Sure,
get onto
please,
that.
yeah. I understand we've got two more segments to go through.
Okay, yeah. So the good news is the last couple are slightly shorter. So very simple. We were talking about this, the Harvard study into longevity, one of the, I think, if not the world's longest running study. And so the people, and they took them when they were little people, and some of the people are still alive. They're well into their 80s now. And so they've been...
As far as I'm aware, it's the longest running study in humans, but not the longest running study of all studies ever in history.
Yes, that's right, on humans.
There's some engineering and someone's been watching a mineral for a while. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
Just there's some random stuff going on.
Yes.
But in humans, I'm pretty sure it's the longest study in humans.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So they took these, so they've been studying these, and again, it was originally just men, but now it's women, obviously. So it's all people. But yeah, they got these 80-year-old guys, and they've been studying their entire lives. They've been doing interviews literally every year with them. They've been looking at doctors' reports. They've been taking blood samples, you name it. So they look back and they said, okay, in the data, can we look back in the data and could we have predicted when these guys were 50, now bearing in mind they're 80, could you look at the data when they were 50 and look at the ones who have made it and look at the health condition as they are now, and could you have predicted that 50 years ago? And people assume it's going to be something like, the people that had bad diet, the people that smoked, the people that didn't exercise, they were the ones that, probably had a heart attack by now. The single biggest predictor of longevity, as you know, was the quality of their close relationships. When people said, even if they argued with the partner like cat and dog, but when the going got rough, they knew they could count on that person. That basically bolstered us. That made us more resilient. That kept people alive and healthier than it was the single biggest factor. And if you, and as they say in their own study, if you'd have asked all the scientists, what will it be? Nobody would have said relationships. So this is how powerful relationships are. It's the quality of our relationships. So we've all heard the term antisocial. Okay, so it's about being pro-social. So I love the term pro-social. So it's about how can we be pro-social. From child psychology, one of the ones that I use on a lot of the mental health courses, so I use 3 S's and 3 V's. So we as individuals like to feel seen, safe and soothed. Now this is from child psychology, but also supported. So very simple, if you don't take anything away from this kind of social part of it other than that, but you can go out back to your kind of people and make your friends or family or partner or mother or father feel seen. In other words, we really kind of, make sure we kind of have contact with them. Safe, again, people like to feel safe. Soothed, okay? Touch is really important. And supported, then that's brilliant, okay? Wow. 3 V's, so visible, valuable, and like they have a voice.
Interesting.
And again, what's interesting, it is interesting, because when I look back to when I had the suicidal crisis, that's exactly how I wasn't feeling. I wasn't feeling, again, in terms of, at that time, wasn't feeling very visible. I was spending a lot of time away from home. I wasn't seeing my colleagues. I was seeing lots of people who I didn't know on a regular basis, delivering training courses to different people every day. So yeah, I wasn't feeling visible by the people that kind of knew and loved me. I wasn't feeling valuable, and I didn't feel like I had a voice. Now, what's interesting is most of that's not true. Okay, because I am valued by the business, and by close people around me. I do have a voice, but that belief that I didn't, and so again, that's why we've got that: is it new? Is it you? Is it true? And so it wasn't true. And so this is what the kind of unhelpful psychology can do. It can tell us a load of crap. Very simple. Sure. And so that's why we've got to be able to pick out, and this is one of my favourite phrases, the truth from the brain noise. We've got to be able to pick out, what's just brain noise and what's the truth here. And so you've got kind of feeling-based reasoning, which is how do I feel, and you've got actual what's the evidence here. So that's really important. So visible, valuable, again, so if you can make other people feel, again, visible, valuable, like they have a voice, again, there's a good chance you'll get on. But what we've also got to do is there are some abusers out there. There are some people who are being abused, who have an abusive relationship. And so what we've got to be able to do is figure out, when is someone making me not feel like this? Sometimes it's time to cut the dead wood, unfortunately. And so, it's really important that people recognize when they're in an unhealthy relationship as well. So really important. And as you know, and again, we spoke about this, feeling part of something. Okay, so again, what you've got here at the Station Gym is fantastic. And people can feel part of a tribe. It's a tribe who like, exercising and again, keeping themselves healthy. It's a community, isn't it? And so very often when you find somebody who feels like they're sidelined, they feel isolated, very often they either are, in terms of they haven't got like a tribe to follow, if you like, people who like what you like and talk about what you talk about and do what you do, or again, it's just it's an unhelpful mental view of the fact that, so they do fit into this community, but they're telling themselves bad stories about it, and in terms of untrue things about that social setup, if that makes sense.
It does. You have to be careful what kind of tribes you get into as well, because these people who feel segregated and isolated, these days they go online and they find other people who are segregated and isolated, and then they form communities of people who feel segregated and isolated, and this turns very, very negative. Yeah. Like incel community, do you know about this kind of thing?
No.
It's basically like people who feel absolutely out of society for a number of different reasons, coming together online to all talk about how bad society is, and then it propagates that same level of thinking or the same modes of thinking, so it can go positive or negative ways, can't it? Yeah. Like there's like the black pill community, there's the MGTOW community.
I've never heard of these.
These are all online communities of people with negative thought processes and negative experiences coming together. Like MGTOW is men going their own way, and it's a men against women and against relationships and against marriage. Yeah. And the black pill community, they're against this other different thing, and these people coalescing together online to all feed each other's negativity, which is not positive. Sometimes it spirals out of control for these people.
So so one of my favourite Buddhist stories is I think it's most Buddhist stories are. You've got like a Buddhist master, and you've got the student, and the student says to the master, "Master, how do you know when it's night and when it's day? Is it this? Is it that? Is it the other?" And he says no all the way through, and he said, "You know the night has passed and the day has begun when you can look at another human being and know they are your brother or sister." And I love it. In other words, there's just enough light to see it's a human, and you know it's your brother or sister. So it's really one of the things I love about my job is I've covered the entire country. I've done online things globally for one of our key clients. So I'm a mental health trainer for one of our key clients globally. So if you work in London, like I've done a lot of, you find a lot of non-English people, you find a lot of African people, and Lithuanian, Czechoslovakian, South American, Indian, you name it. I've met these people, and they're people. And they're people. So regardless of whether they identify as a different gender, or whether they're a different religion, or their skin colour is different, or they're not from Rotherham like I am, they're from Sheffield, over the border, a toy town I think they call us in Sheffield. That's what Rotherham's known as.
Is it?
Yeah, but ultimately we've got to celebrate our.
Watch out for this wire.
Oh yeah, okay.
Nearly,
Yeah, sorry.
that wire, just going to pull it out a little bit.
We've got to celebrate, so honour our differences and celebrate our similarities. And so it's really important. So touch, really important. Okay, we talked about the 7 neurochemicals of happiness. Oxytocin, critical because you haven't been getting that. Okay, well, how do I know that? Because we've been kept hands, face, space, we've been kept separate. And you have not been getting this neurotransmitter it's called the love hormone or cuddle hormone. It's exuded from the posterior pituitary gland in the brain, and we get it from close human contact when we feel bonded and we trust someone and touch skin on skin. And you haven't been getting that, so please do. Please go and touch people. So Connor and I.
That's going to be clipped out, that bit. Mark Nixon says, "Go touch people."
But seriously,
that's a clip.
Honestly, it's critical because you can see the effects it has. So even in the classroom, when I'm kind of lecturing. You've got some people who you can see the resistance to shake hands. That was never an issue 3 years ago. And there's still a resistance. Is this person okay with me touching them? And so it's had an absolute lasting effect. And we've got to get back to human contact because it matters. It matters because we exude a neurotransmitter on the back of touch. And it's good for our heart. Our heart's got oxytocin receptors, which basically makes the heart relax when we're in physical touch. So it's really, really important. So socially, we're meant to be with people, we're meant to interact with people, and it's really important. So if you know anybody out there who's struggling, who needs some human contact, go out there, make them feel seen, safe, soothe, support them if you can, make them feel visible, valued, and like they have a voice, and they'll probably be your best friend.
That's lovely. All right, and then we've got spiritual.
We have.
Left to go then.
We have. So yeah, the BioPsychoSocial model is exactly that. And so, but one of the things I heard about it was, it kind of misses something, and it misses the obvious thing, which is who you really are. And who you really are isn't your job, because you might change your job. And so that's not you. Who were you before your parents gave you a name? You were a soul, if you like. So I'm not talking about an organised religion here. I'm talking about this thing underneath. So every thought you've ever had has come and gone, but you're the same you. All the feelings have come and gone. Everything we've eaten has passed through, but there's this thing underneath it all that exists. So I'm talking about that in terms of spirituality. I'm talking about that thing that sees all these other things come and go.
Sometimes it's called the watcher.
The watcher.
And it can be quite interesting when you were talking about like negative thinking and then recognizing the negative thoughts, because it can be easy to get wrapped up in them and think that those thoughts are us. But if you're noticing the negative thought, then who's that noticing it?
Yeah.
The negative thought comes, you notice you're thinking negative. Who's that?
Yeah. So
who's that noticing the negativity? That's you.
Yeah. My little phrase is negative thoughts are no match for the powerful witnessing presence which sees their arising and passing. The true me, I'm a natural force born of our star. My ancestors are the myriad souls that came before me as my ancestors, and their wisdom and presences exist in my biology, and all we need to do is kind of turn it on by putting ourselves in certain situations. So as a photographer, as you know, that connects me with the world. So for me, the spiritual part of this is, and this is what's important, you can't tell people what's meaningful. Everyone's got to find their own meaning. And so I found meaning in this topic. As you know, I've been in health and safety for a long time, 28 years, but I've only been in mental health for 7 years. And it didn't make commercial sense for me to go into it. The business told me not to. I was encouraged not to do it, but I ignored them because something deep down in me knew it mattered. And so I went on a complete commercial limb doing this, and it turns out it was the right thing to do. And I know I've changed more lives in 7 years than I have done in 28. just getting on this, helping people who really need help. So it really is one of the most life-affirming things it's not one of it's the most life-affirming thing I've ever done, without question. Knowing, hand on heart, that you've helped someone who really wanted to be helped. And for me, that's spiritual. It goes beyond BioPsychoSocial. It goes deeper than that. So it's really important that we've got things that lift our spirits. It might be people that lift our spirits. It might be a pastime that lifts. It might be an animal that lifts our spirits. For me, again, nature and particularly capturing nature in photography and videography is really important. So the spiritual side of it is sometimes we just again, one of the drone videos that I've done, it's this mountain in Derbyshire called Dragon's Back, which is this unique rock formation. And I was in a real low point, and I said to my manager, I need a day off. And he's like, what's wrong? Is it work? And no, it's not work. I just need to go and climb a mountain. I need to reconnect and climb that thing and just get on top and stand there like this. And so, yeah, I captured it on this drone film where it's flying around me, and it was deeper than BioPsychoSocial. It was spiritual. And so for me, the stars, nature, but also, deep connections with other people, that it's deeper, and humor, having a laugh, it's spiritual. Yeah, it creates endorphins, but it's deeper, and that connects us.
Interesting.
So, yeah, to kind of wrap all these things together, that they're all in concert. So the kind of take home here is there are lots of things we can do biologically. Okay, again, exercise, eating, reducing stress, coping with stress, relaxation, again, hydration, nutrition, stretching, movement, getting out into the environment. The psychology, so we've really got to look at our own thinking and self-talk. And again, is it good? Is it helping us? Are we our own best cheerleader or our own worst slave driver? So again, are we being kind to ourselves? And I've written a little document on self-kindness, which I think is really important, because generally we're probably going to be, on most people, the most unkind they've ever been, is to themselves. And so it's really important that we can be kind to ourselves. Self-compassion is important. So there's the psychology. So again, what's going to define us? What's going to define us? So let's tell ourselves a better story. Again, not some blind optimistic story, but a better story about the future, and have those future positives. Let's get reconnected with people. Let's get oxytocin flowing. Connor and I, once this is finished, we'll be having a man hug, and so we'll be bonded by this substance called oxytocin, which bonds us all. And so those close contacts, those close relationships are really important. And again, fundamentally, I've found that helping other people, it's the most rewarding thing ever, which is why I love doing this kind of thing. And I really thank you for the invite to do this podcast. And then let's get deeper. There's something deeper than all that sometimes, regardless of religion and things like that. There's a deeper us that needs stuff. So ask yourself a real deep question. What do I really need? What do I really need? And let's get that deep.
It's meaning and purpose, isn't it? I have, as you know, tattoos on my arms of things I never want to forget. This is the chemical molecule for oxytocin. Yeah. There on my arm. Yes. To remind me that social.
Just show them that molecule, because that if you look at adrenaline molecule, it's tiny. Whereas if you look at that molecule, it's huge.
Yeah, if you can see it on camera there. Yeah, quite a complex molecule. But everybody knows love's not simple. don't they, I guess? But it's to remind me literally that social and bonding is one of the most important things. Yeah. And it can be. It's a difficult and lifelong and possibly human struggle to search for meaning. It's like the book Man's Search for Meaning, isn't it?
Good old Viktor Frankl.
Exactly, isn't it? Going back to like very, very deep philosophy, etc. To offer me, this is just my perspective, but I found meaning and purpose in different things, in other people, in family, in friends, in loved ones, in helping others. That's why I get so much fulfillment from my job, because I literally get to help people be healthier and happier. Also through learning and studying as well, like we're talking about spirituality, etc. And I'm not necessarily religious, and I wouldn't know that I'm necessarily a spiritual person either, but I do read and absorb and try and think about spirituality, etc. And one of my favorite spiritual teachers, this guy on the back of my phone here, Ram Dass, this is one of his main teachings here. This is for the meaning and purpose of your life. If you want one, if you don't know what the meaning of your purpose in life is, he says, and his teacher says, that you can do this, you can love, serve, and remember. What is this? It's love people, it's help people. And the remember is remembering that you're special and other people are special. And if you don't think you're special and other people are not special either, then you've forgotten, and your path should be to rediscover and re-remember that you are actually special, and so is everybody else. And you can do that through loving people, helping people, practicing gratitude and appreciating yourself and other people. And I think as a baseline foundation, that's a thing that gives me meaning and purpose and direction. If you feel lost, I think they're good places to start.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So I hope your listeners have found some interest in points in there.
Points for the ages in this podcast, literally. I hope people have been making notes or rewind or re-listen or something, because absolutely fantastic. The amount of, I don't even know what, little monikers you've given and teachings, big and small, just throughout this is absolutely amazing, Mark. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure.
Amazing as always.
Always a pleasure, and I will never ever turn you down at the invitation.
I appreciate your time as well, because I know you're busy as well. And we only talked about arranging this like a week or two ago, and then we've got it in the books and in the bank, haven't we?
Yeah.
So any concluding thoughts, or are we done and dusted?
No, it really is just, again, if you realise you're getting a little bit wrapped up in any of those areas, realise that it's, again, the more you can do across a broad spectrum is probably going to be more helpful than just focusing absolutely on one particular thing. If you need professional help, get it, okay? Get it. If you want to take me up on that offer, if your thinking is reached a really unhelpful point, please get in touch. That's a 100% absolute offer there for anybody who's having trouble in times. I don't pretend to be anything I'm not. But we know each other because I helped somebody when I had no expertise, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And that's how we know each other now. So yeah, I say my piece, and then I direct people towards professional help if they need it. So again, that's the offer there. So hope you found it helpful once again. I will see you at some point in the future on another podcast, no doubts. So Connor.
Yep. Absolutely excellent. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll speak to you and we'll see you again soon.